For the past 2 weeks, the obsession has been all about where we're going to place Kendrick Lamar. From a historical sense, is he top 5? Is he the greatest of all time? Before we can get to that, I think what we first have to ask ourselves is, what makes somebody great? The question is always about who is the greatest, but there's never been a conversation about what makes somebody great. An iconic figure of greatness that we would all agree is Michael Jordan. Greatest basketball player of all times, at least that's what most people say. The reasons why we can determine his greatness are very practical. He played in the NBA for the Chicago Bulls and he won 6 championships. And he has such and such amount of MVP awards. Nobody wins rap. Nobody wins a trophy by the end of the year. So there's no possible way to scale victories at the end of every calendar year if you're a rapper. The only thing that can be scaled within that conversation is the one thing that people don't like to talk about, and that's record sales. Record sales have been taken out of the conversation of the greatest of all time because it's a conversation that purists have. They like to talk about what makes a great artist, and that's all understandable. But if we're going to try to determine who the best is, then that has to factor in some way. How do you look at the greatest of all time list? Is it an interchangeable position to you? Is it like a presidential term limit? Does Kendrick have it now and then Joey Badass takes it 2 to 3 years from now? Or do you look at it as sort of a ceremonial passing of the torch? He's in the current position and he is just one of many of this sort of secret group of greatness. Skill plays a big component in finding out who is the best or who is the best at the time. But skill, I think, is a bit overrated because skill is all subjective. Somebody that you could find enjoyable, I find them to be a bore. What can't be denied within this conversation is influence. Influence plays a huge part when it comes to finding out and to gauge who are the tastemakers, who are the people that are guiding and impacting this culture. For example, Jay-Z. Jay-Z came into the game and he didn't want to be signed to a record label. Jay-Z wanted a partnership. That's exactly what he got. In his music, what he basically communicated was ownership. And he's still saying it to this day. Till you own your own, you can't be free. Or you can't be me. That's what Jay-Z impacted on the game. Kanye brought more of an artistic value to the game. He's a visual artist. His plans that he has in fashion, that's where his influence has come into play. But with both of them, it took time to figure out what that was going to be. That's something, of course, that can be scaled. Future's had more of an immediate influence, more of a sonic influence, which I think is the most shallow form of influence because it could just be people capitalizing off a sound that's really popular right now. But in terms of longevity, how you influence and impact the culture is how we can determine your place in history. In my opinion, the greatest of all time is a Hall of Fame. There's no way for us to figure out who the greatest of all time is because obviously different age groups, different demographics will say a variety of things. If we look back at the influence scale, then there's a strong argument for Rakim. Before Rakim, you had people like Curtis Blow. You had people who were just having fun and they were sort of commercial acts and they weren't looked at as artists. When Rakim came in the game, he let you know that this emceeing thing was an art form. You developed the sense of self within it and you could project that in your words and it was empowering. Before him, there was no one like that. And his impact has obviously gave us MCs like Nas, people like Black Thought, and even though he was his contemporary, KRS-One to a certain extent. But influence is the key. The only problem is it takes time to get there and to show and prove the data.